In this video, we will explain the use of two configuration settings, locations, and contact addresses that are critical for distributed environments. In a small deployment, there may be no network address translation, abbreviated as NAT, in use, or all of the components of the next-gen firewall solution may be on the same side of any NAT device. Therefore, all components are able to communicate with each other using the actual IP addresses assigned. In this case, there is no need to configure contact addresses and locations. In the deployment illustrated, the firewalls, management server, and log server can all reach each other using the illustrated IP addresses. This is possible because both of the private networks are considered to be internal. NAT is being applied only for traffic that flows to or from the internet, but not for traffic passing between the internal private networks. But larger deployments are distributed. That is, components are located on multiple sites, multiple networks, and with NAT in use at one or more locations between components. In the deployment illustrated, the two perimeter firewalls, one at the Chicago site and one at the Barcelona site, each have addresses on both the public internet and their respective private networks. But the management and log servers are only assigned addresses from the private network at the Chicago site. Since these private addresses are not routable by the internet routers, in order for the next-gen firewall components in one of the private networks to reach the next-gen firewall components in the other private network, we will need to configure publicly reachable IP addresses for those servers at which they can be reached via NAT. This address is a contact address. At this point, we should define some terms that will be used in the remainder of this video. A contact address is an IP address that is reachable from a remote network that can be used with NAT to send traffic to an address on a private network that would not otherwise be reachable from that remote network. A location is an element that defines a site. Within the same site, all components should be able to reach each other using private addresses, but components from a different site would need to use contact addresses and NAT. In simple deployments, it can be possible to group elements in multiple sites in the same location. Another optional configuration element is the exception. An exception is used when a specific contact address must be used from one or more specific locations. With locations and contact addresses defined, a next-gen firewall component that needs to open a connection will use the following rules. When two components are set to the same location, contact addresses will not be used. But when two components are set to different locations, if an exception has been created for the source location, then the indicated contact address will be used. When two components are set to different locations and no exception applies, then the default contact address will be used. So now, let's look at our deployment again. We'll begin by organizing our deployment into locations. This will be used to help us identify which communication requires the use of contact addresses instead of assigned IPs, and in some cases, which of several contact addresses should be used. Next, we need to identify or obtain from our ISP one or more public IP addresses that we can use for the devices that need contact addresses. We can then assign those addresses to the devices as needed. All of the components in Chicago can communicate with each other using the assigned IP addresses without the need for contact addresses. But in order for the management server and the log server in Chicago To be reachable by the components in Barcelona, we need to configure contact addresses for each as shown. Similarly, in order for the management server in Chicago to be able to reach the second log server in Barcelona, it will have to have a contact address set as well. Note that the firewall in Barcelona will not need a contact address, since it has an externally reachable IP address that can be used. With this configuration in place, when the management server needs to reach the Barcelona log server, the locations are checked, revealing that the management server is in the HQ location and the log server is in the bar location. Since these do not match, it will use the contact address for the Barcelona log server. Thus, the traffic is sent to the NAT address for the log server. It reaches the Barcelona firewall first, which performs the network address translation and delivers the traffic to the internal IP address of the log server. It works similarly in the reverse direction. If an administrator is using the SMC client from Barcelona, it will already be set to use the contact address for the management server in Chicago. But when the SMC client is used to view log data, it will also need to communicate with the Chicago log server. As before, the locations are checked, and the devices are recognized as being from different locations, so the contact address identified for the Chicago log server will be used. The traffic is thus sent to the NAT address for the Chicago log server. It reaches the Chicago firewall first, which performs NAT and delivers the traffic to the internal IP address of the log server. Finally, other scenarios can be drawn from the illustrated deployment, and the process would work similarly in each case. This short video is supplemented with a short hackstack document, which will illustrate how these configurations are set within the SMC interface. Please consult that document for more information.